affair met my husband at the bar and clowned him with his friends. But then he decided to do this. I never thought of myself as a marrying kind of woman, but I definitely never thought I'd be a married woman cheating on her husband with a guy from my past. I'm Amy, and today I come here to tell my story and ask for some advice. In college, when I discovered my new freedom and the pleasures of life, I immediately knew it would take a lot for me to settle down. For the girl I was in the beginning of my 20s, a serious relationship could easily be outvalued by partying with my friends. That was until my 24 years of age, a handsome businessman named Aiden made me forget all about partying, which I still had going on at its best. At first, I thought we'd be a 1 or 2 time thing, nothing much like everyone else I got involved with before, but our chemistry and connection were thrilling and I simply couldn't be away from him. Our relationship and feelings moved fast, and in less than 2 years we were married and living happily ever after. Today I am 34 and my husband 37, but the fairy tale wasn't exactly as we expected. My husband comes from a very traditional family. He works at his father's company, just like his 2 brothers, and his mother was always extremely conservative and protective of them. At the day of our wedding, my soon-to-be mother-in-law pulled me aside and gave me a speech about how precious the virtue I was about to offer her son was, and how it is my job to keep him a virtuous man for the rest of his life, even if I am not willing to at certain moments. Little did she know, since my virtue had been taken a long time before that. Despite his family being a usual third party in our relationship, Aiden and I were always on peaceful terms in the beginning. He never got angry, we rarely argued, and we never had much to stress about. All the love and peace with his family lasted until we got close to the half of our 30s, also known as the usual age when parents start wanting to be grandparents. Aiden's mom started demanding a child from us. She said it was past the time we started trying, and she wouldn't accept no for an answer. Aiden was the middle child, his older brother already had a kid, and apparently it was our turn. That was the beginning of our downfall, and let me tell you why. At a random family dinner, my mother-in-law brought the subject up in front of everyone. It seemed like an ultimatum. She asked if I had any reproductive problems, because we never talked about pregnancy scares, to which I answered it was because I was on the pill. Her reaction was like I had confessed committing a felony. I heard a lecture about how meaningless my life and marriage were being almost 34 and still on the pill without thinking about kids. In 10 years of being together, Aiden and I hadn't even discussed kids, if we wanted, or how many we wanted. That's how much that matter mattered to our lives. Basically nothing. She talked for half an hour about a woman's role in a marriage, and I wanted to unalive myself in front of her. The humiliation dinner wasn't enough. She kept talking about it for weeks and months, until Aiden, being the biggest mama's boy, turned to me while we were in bed and said, "Maybe we should start trying for kids." That day I sort of overreacted, because it seemed like he only wanted it because his mom said so, and I said that to him repeatedly. In that same week, Aiden came to talk to me about it. He said he would love having a kid looking like me running around, because he loved me and wanted to build a family with me. I accepted the idea while still rolling my eyes and set an appointment with my doctor. I was officially getting off the pill. During that month, Aiden and I started our kid project. Nothing actually changed. Our sexual life was a bit busier, but at the same time a little too much scientifical and not that enjoyable. Since our goal was only to get me pregnant, Aiden didn't really think about making me happy in these moments. I wanted to give up on the first few weeks. It was annoying me, and I started not wanting to be around my husband as much as I used, because when we were together he only talked about pregnancy and babies. He thought that maybe if we told his mom we were trying, it would get her off our backs. That was our initial thought at first. We wouldn't take it that seriously, but he got involved and sort of obsessed with it. The worst part? His mother didn't get off our backs. Every time I saw her, she'd talk about some article about conception she read, foods I should eat to help my fertility, and didn't let me drink alcohol in family dinners because, what if? Every time I took a pregnancy test, I hoped with my fingers crossed that it wouldn't be positive. The whole situation was giving me the biggest ick. I lost all of my attraction to my husband because every time we did it, his mother came to my mind talking about the best positions to get pregnant. It was starting to get creepy as I did everything to be away from Aiden. While I was in the middle of this mess, I got an email from my old school about the reunion of all the people who graduated in the same year I did. I still have contact with my best friend from high school. Her name is Emily. We were both very excited for the reunion. It would be fun and awkward at the same time to meet the people we studied with. Aiden asked if I wanted him to go with me, kind of expecting I'd say yes. I told him I hadn't seen Emily in months and we wanted to catch up with each other's life, like a girls' night. He never had a problem with me going out by myself, so he was really chill about it. He just didn't know I could have taken him, and I just didn't want to because I spent most of the night talking about the House of Horrors, aka his family, and the pregnancy obsession. The biggest part of the night wasn't even gossiping with Emily, or seeing the girls who made me hate myself during high school. It was seeing Daniel again after 15 years. Daniel was the guy I dated during my junior and senior year in high school. We never actually considered ourselves boyfriend and girlfriend, but he was the first boy I liked, and also who I had my first time with. I hadn't heard from him ever since I got into college. When I saw him standing at the other side of the sports court, which we used to have PE lessons together, I felt goosebumps. He was talking to the same boys he used to be friends with in high school, and as much as I hated it at the moment, he looked amazing, like someone who definitely peaked in his 30s and never looked better. I was gathering up the courage to approach him while my heart pounded in my chest. I kept stalling and avoided looking at him. Emily and I were talking to a girl who was always my partner in science classes when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and saw Daniel standing in front of me, seeming to be taller than he already was when we dated. His face had a genuine smile when he said, "Amy, hi, wow, it's been forever. How have you been?" I told Emily I was going to catch up with him and I'd find her later. She didn't think much of it, because she did the same with her ex-boyfriend minutes before. Daniel and I sat on a table, and while we talked, it felt like no time had passed. We caught up on our lives, reminisced about high school, and laughed about old memories. Daniel had become a successful architect and had recently moved back to our hometown for a big project. The more we talked, the more I felt that old spark coming back. As the night went on, the reunion started to wind down, but Daniel and I weren't ready to part ways. "Want to grab a drink at that old bar we used to go to? The one that they never asked for IDs?" he suggested. I waved at Emily to invite her. She came to our table and immediately said she couldn't, because she had plans to hook up with her ex in his car, just like the old times. I have to say at the moment I felt jealous that Emily was single and could have that nostalgic adventure. I just didn't know I'd do the same. Daniel looked at me and said, "Guess it's just you and me then." I felt butterflies in my stomach. When we got to the bar, we continued to talk and reminisce. The alcohol helped loosen me up, and soon we were flirting like old times. It felt like we were in a bubble, separate from the rest of the world. I knew it was dangerous, but I couldn't help myself. The attention and affection that I had been missing from Aiden were intoxicating. One drink led to another, and before I knew it, we were back at his place. As we kissed, all the frustrations and resentment I had been feeling towards the whole trying to get pregnant thing melted away. For that night, I felt alive and desired again. I feel I had to say we were obviously safe. I was already screwing up by cheating on Aiden. I couldn't get things even worse by getting pregnant while doing so. A few hours later, I realized how terribly I'd acted, but for some reason I didn't feel guilty, just embarrassed, and a constant thought of, what have I done? I discreetly left Daniel's apartment because he had already fallen asleep. I left him a note saying I had to go, but wrote my phone number in it. I figured, what was the harm? On the drive home, I kept replaying the night in my mind. What had I done? How could I face Aiden? I kept thinking about what he told me at the bar. "So, Amy, you told me you were married. Where is your husband, and how could he not be with his beautiful wife right now?" Daniel was so charming I couldn't even say it didn't make sense that I fell for his charms again. He didn't even care about me being married. Not that I did, but I didn't think he'd hit on me in such an obvious way. When I got home, Aiden was still asleep. I crawled into bed next to him, feeling a wave of shame wash over me. But at the same time, a part of me couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. I was torn between my guilt and the thrill of the affair. For the next few weeks, I threw myself into trying to conceive with Aiden, trying to make up for what I'd done. But the more we tried, the more I realized that my heart wasn't in it. I kept finding excuses to see Daniel, and our affair continued. It was like a drug. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. After seeing Daniel for the second time, I decided to set another appointment with my doctor. I decided to go back on the pill. The last thing I needed was a pregnancy coming out of the situation, either from Aiden or Daniel. A baby would just make things worse. I didn't tell Aiden I was taking birth control again. At that point, there were many things I didn't tell him. I don't exactly what motivated me to keep seeing Daniel. My relationship with Aiden was cold, and I secretly held against him that he was just doing what he was doing because of his mother. That created an emasculated image of my husband in my mind, which was hard to ignore when I could literally have Daniel in all the ways I could, without him being obsessed with getting me pregnant. One night, Aiden told me he'd go out with his friends to a bar. I thought about calling Daniel, but I was exhausted from work and wanted a night to myself with a bottle of wine. So that's what I did. It was so relaxing. But it lasted only until around 1 a.m. I got a call from Daniel with the worst news I could possibly get. He told me he went out with his friends and saw Aiden at the bar. That was the second place they were going to that night, so Daniel was already drunk when he got there. He recognized my husband from my social media. Daniel immediately knew it was him. He kept saying he was sorry and hesitantly told me he approached Aiden and said, "Amy is so good in bed." After we did it for 4 hours straight after our high school reunion, I understood why you're such a dumbass. There was a lot more cursing in that line, but either way, you got the point. I started yelling at Daniel on the phone, and he kept saying he was sorry, and he didn't think before he said it. Turns out he got punched in the mouth, and Aiden left the bar pretty pissed off. I had no idea if he was coming home after that, but I knew I was in deep trouble. Around 2 hours later, I heard our apartment's door being violently closed. He showed up in our living room, where I was, looking furious. Something happened, and I would very much appreciate it if what I heard isn't true. "I'm so sorry, Aiden. I screwed up." I saw his face in shock when he realized I already knew what he was talking about. He kept staring at me like I was murdering someone in front of him. I couldn't lie, so I just explained everything to him. Aiden's face was pale the entire time. The only thing he said after I told him everything was, "How long has this been going on?" I was honest and said a couple of months. Aiden looked like he had been punched in the gut. A couple of months? While we were trying to start a family? I took a deep breath and admitted I started taking the pill again after the affair started. I saw tears in his eyes. I couldn't help but cry even more. Aiden's face hardened. "I trusted you, Amy. I thought we were in this together. What the hell? I married a deranged slut." Now I was getting the punch in the gut through words. I reached out to him, but he stepped back. I tried saying it was a mistake and asking for a second chance. He just laughed like he was going crazy. "You start an affair while we're trying to have a baby and lie about taking the pill, just so you can cheat on your husband in peace. How do you even have the guts to ask me for a second chance?" "That's it, Amy. I'm leaving. This is over." He walked away, opened and closed the door the same way as he got in. I started crying even more after hearing him slamming the door. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. I had betrayed the man who had given me everything, and now I had to face the consequences. The next few days were a blur. Aiden avoided me. There was literally no sign of him. I wanted to talk to him, to explain, but I didn't know where to start. Meanwhile, I was sort of ghosting Daniel. I was too depressed to leave the house, and he was the last person I wanted to see at that moment. One night, I got a call from Aiden's mother. "Amy, we need to talk," she said, her voice icy. I knew this was coming. Aiden must have told her everything. I was only hearing her voice, but I could see her face with an expression of disapproval, the one she looked at me with every time she saw me, but I imagined this one was a little worse. "I can't believe you would do this to my son," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "After everything we've done for you." I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry. I know I've hurt Aiden and I regret it." She then dumped a bunch of insults on me. Guess I deserved it. She told me to stay away from her family or else she'd take permanent action. I had no idea what she meant by that. I got the call from my mother-in-law yesterday. I don't know what to do. I love Aiden and I wish I could do something to not lose him. We are going through a hard time, but he still is the guy I fell in love with when I was 24. On the other hand, I know I screwed up big time. Would I just hurt him even more if I ran to him and begged him to forgive me? Will I just make things worse? Is our marriage really over without salvation? I don't ever want to see Daniel again, and I'm willing to make things right with Aiden, but at the same time, I don't want to make him go through an even greater pain. Please, give me your advice, Reddit. Update. Hey everyone, it's Amy again. I wanted to give you all an update on what's been happening since my last post. As you might remember, my husband Aiden went MIA after finding out about my affair with Daniel, a guy from my past. I definitely took your advice into consideration. Besides the comments saying even worse things than Aiden's mom said, which I deserved, I guess, you said the most honest thing to do was to let Aiden go. I'm getting the consequences of my actions, as you all said, and I should deal with them and not make his life worse than I already did. Going through this is heart-wrenching, filled with moments of regret and what-ifs. I couldn't help but reflect on the choices I had made. My affair with Daniel had set off a chain of events that led to the end of my marriage. It was a painful lesson to something I already knew was wrong. In the end, the affair had been a turning point, but not in the way I'd hoped. It had forced us to confront the flaws in our relationship and ultimately led us to part ways. It was a difficult and painful journey, but it taught me the importance of honesty, communication, and the consequences of betrayal. Looking back, I realized that our marriage had been built on shaky foundations. The pressure from Aiden's family, the lack of communication, and my own insecurities had all contributed to its downfall. It is a tragic ending, but it is also a lesson in the complexities of love and the fragility of trust. Yesterday, Aiden's lawyer came to our apartment to discuss our divorce. He came to talk about our ending terms before making the official divorce contract. Aiden wanted the apartment, and it would just be unreasonable for me to fight for it, so I accepted all of his terms. After the lawyer left, I wrote a letter to Aiden. In it, I apologized for everything repeatedly and vowed to learn from my mistakes and to be a better person. The road ahead was uncertain, but I wished him a future with someone with honesty, integrity, and the hope of finding love again someday. I know that when eventually he moves on and I hear about him being with someone else, it will definitely be hurtful. It would be like seeing the life I could have had if I hadn't taken Aiden for granted and ruined 10 years of marriage for nothing. He is an amazing man, and he will make someone else very happy someday. He made me very happy, and I still made him go through the worst thing someone could do to their spouse. Update. Hello guys. It's Amy here again with a final update about my story with my ex-husband Aiden. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized, and a lot has changed. The initial weeks after our separation were incredibly tough. Aiden and I tried to keep things civil, but the emotional wounds were still fresh. We decided it was best for both of us to minimize contact and focus on healing individually. I moved in with my best friend Emily for a while, and she's been a rock for me through all of this. One of the hardest parts was adjusting to life without Aiden. After being together for so long, everything felt strange and unfamiliar. I missed the comfort of our routine, even though it had become strained towards the end. I spent a lot of time reflecting on my actions and the choices that led to the downfall of our marriage. During this time, I continued to see a therapist. It's been incredibly helpful to have a professional to guide me through the emotional turmoil and help me understand the underlying issues that contributed to my affair. I've been working on rebuilding my self-esteem and figuring out who I am outside of my relationship with Aiden. What I did to Aiden was unforgivable. We had so many dreams and plans for the future that are now just memories. It's strange to think about what could have been if things had been different. Aiden has been doing his own healing as well. From what I've heard through mutual friends, he's been focusing on his work and spending time with his family. I'm glad to hear he's doing okay, even though it's painful to know we couldn't make it work. I truly hope he finds happiness, whether it's on his own or with someone new. As for Daniel, I've cut off all contact with him. The affair was a wake-up call for me, showing me how much I needed to change. I realized that running back to him would only perpetuate the cycle of hurt and betrayal. It was a tough decision, but one I knew was necessary for my own growth. Financially, the divorce was a bit of a strain, but I'm managing. I decided to stay in the city and found a small apartment that's cozy and perfect for starting over. It's not the life I envisioned, but I'm slowly finding peace in the new normal. Every day is a step towards healing. The guilt and regret still linger, but I'm trying to focus on the future and the person I want to become. I know it's a long journey, but I'm determined to come out of this stronger and wiser. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice on my original post. It meant a lot to me during one of the darkest times of my life. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's the importance of honesty and communication in a relationship. I hope that by sharing my story, others can learn from my mistakes and make better choices in their own lives.